So, exactly 1 year ago, my sophomore year of college, about 2 days into my new internship, my boss and I went to a networking event. We were at a women's networking group, so there were about 10 people seated at each table, and we all were expected to stand around the table and introduce ourselves as a way to connect with those who we resonated with. It was my turn to introduce myself to a group of successful attorneys, lawyers, doctors, entrepreneurs, and life coaches, all of whom had made a name for themselves. So I share, hi, my name is Bushra Amiwala. I'm an undergraduate sophomore at DePaul University, and I'm an intern at the Wright Foundation. That's it. That's who I am. My boss looked over at me with a confused expression on her face, and I knew exactly why. It's because I'd withheld from letting these women know that I was other things as well. That, for instance, I ran for the Cook County Board of Commissioners at the age of 19 against a 16-year seasoned politician, and I mobilized hundreds of volunteers across the country and registered thousands of first-time voters to vote for the first time. But instead of sharing these details, I simply smiled and nodded as a way to reinforce that I was done. I shared who I am, not who I was. Later in the cab back to the office, my boss looked over and asked why I shared so little about myself and why I didn't touch on any of my accomplishments. And I looked over at her and I said, because I lost. How can I share my run for office and campaign as something that is impressive if the next question that comes is, well, did you win? And I say no. How could I share that as something impressive? And what I also found was, in response to that, she goes, well, that's fair, but why didn't you share that you were at Glamour magazine's College Woman of the Year, that you were on the cover of Time magazine just a few months ago? I nationally became known as the Muslim teen running for office, to the point where I turned 20 and later 21, and people still call me that. A lot of people still don't even know my name because of that. And I said, I don't want to brag. And this whole time, in the guise of humility, I realized I was doubting all of my efforts. I thought I was the most humble person on the planet. Like, I'm so humble, I don't brag about my accomplishments. But turns out, it's not that I was being humble, it's that I'm just really insecure. And I'm not insecure because I lost my election. It's insecurity that kept me from running for office to begin with. As a matter of fact, every sort of reservation I had that came from deciding whether I should run or not was rooted in that insecurity. I said, how can I run for a seat where there isn't someone who remotely looks like myself at the table? And how could I run for a seat at the age of 19? But also I realized that all of these were excuses I was telling myself to convince myself that the time was not right, that maybe I should wait. And far too many of ourselves miss out on opportunities because we're waiting for a green light of some sort, or whether it be masked as trying to find confidence and such. What the reality is, there is no such thing as the right time. That time does not exist. We make that time for ourselves. Later on, when I decided to run for office, I realized that the only thing that I really wish I waited for was a time where women, we weren't reduced to our appearances in politics. I found that as women, we tend to be reduced to our physical appearances and our clothing while running. And as a Muslim woman who wears a hijab, being reduced to my appearance meant the inability to see beyond my religion. And that ended up becoming really distracting, and it distracted from my message, campaign, and platform. And being a candidate who's seeking votes and support and trying to foster that became a challenge. To the point where I became, as I mentioned, I was the Muslim teen running, so my religion was always at the forefront. And with that, I found journalists excessively promoting the fact that I was the first Muslim person to ever run for this seat, or the first Pakistani Muslim woman to get my name on a ballot, as a way to subconsciously appeal to a set of readers who held Muslim people to a lower standard. And the reinforcement of my identity made my campaign seem all the more impressive. So while running, there was a debate between my two male opponents and I, and a newspaper was highlighting this debate. And in that article, it shared the two policy ideas that my respective male opponents presented, and it said, And Bushra Amiwala wore a stylish light pink hijab to the forum. And at another time, I was offered $54,500 worth of corporate PAC funding as a way to influence my decision-making had I been elected to the Cook County Board, which I later declined as a way to represent people, not corporations. And I've shared a pretty low-quality video of myself on Facebook sharing that I turned this money down and I want to represent real people. And I got lots of messages of support, but I also got messages that said, "Could you lighten the lipstick next time?" And at my first fundraising dinner, I wore a red dress because it had long sleeves and I tried to dress conservatively. And the next day I woke up and images from my fundraising dinner were viral with the headline, "Red dress means Republican," as if I was sending subliminal messaging through my clothing. And at a political event, I was approached by a constituent who shared that we were talking about my path to victory. And he shared that perhaps if all the Indians in my district weren't illegal, they could vote for me, and maybe I'd get elected then. And in each of these instances, I wish I could stand here today and inspire you all and share the sassy response I gave in each of these situations. However, as a candidate, I was also very self-aware. I knew that any justified response I'd give in either of these situations or scenarios would either be attributed to my age. Oh my God, Bushra is so immature. How could she say that? Or my gender. Wow, her hormones must be whack, like it's probably the time of the month, as opposed to any justified response. And the reason why I share this with all of you today is because a research study from Oxford University found that the fear of failure is actually on the top of the list for most people. However, overcoming the fear of failure is on the top of the list for millennials in particular. But the same study also found that millennials suffer from a lack of confidence because many of them strive for perfectionism. And as we all know, there is no such thing as being perfect. But do you see how reaching for this unattainable standard makes it so we fall down this cycle of convincing ourselves to wait, that maybe we're not good enough, and creating excuses for ourselves? And the author of the book, The Confidence Factor, found that identifying your own limiting beliefs is the first step to overcoming them. One of the reasons why I felt so insecure about people focusing on my Muslim identity and hyper-focusing on the way that I look is because my greatest insecurity is rooted in my physical appearance. And the inability to see beyond that became such a problem for me while campaigning. But I challenge you all to do what you're waiting to do in spite of all of your insecurities because it is all the more impressive anyways. Within a week of filing my nominating papers to run for office, I didn't make a Facebook post, I didn't publicly share yet, honestly didn't even tell my parents yet at that point. I got a call from my local elected officials, and he called me into his office to speak of important matters. And I was very excited because I figured this was my chance to get resources and endorsement and to help sort of pave my path to victory. And I was shocked at what came next. Drop out. Do not run for this seat. Maybe you should wait. And I felt myself sink into my seat, yet I kept my posture as straight as I could. And there were thousands of thoughts rushing through my mind, yet I processed exactly what I wanted to say slowly. And I felt a lump in my throat, yet I was somehow able to articulate what I wanted to say respectfully. I was not going to sit here and be told to wait my turn, and neither should any of you. I was going to run, and I was going to give it my all. But the crazy thing is, I didn't even think twice about the amount of times I told myself to wait. Yet I was so angry to hear someone else give it to me. So I gave it my all, and I ran. But I still lost. And I'm finally learning to accept it and embrace it and not put it in a box and ignore it and integrate it into who I am, because as an intelligent, conscious human being, I will never deprive myself of this truth that I will never fully be secure. But in spite of my insecurities, doing it anyways is making myself a stronger person, and it makes it all the more impressive anyways. So now back to my internship. Through the course of my internship, I got coffee with the COO of the foundation I was interning at, and she asked me what motivates me. And I shared it was my fear of not being good enough, which is similar to what most high achievers say. And apart from the fear of not being good enough, I realized that doing it anyways my view of myself was changing, and doing it regardless of that was adding other layers and elements to myself. So that wasn't the only thing that motivated me to do what I wanted to do. So ask yourself, what are you waiting to do? What is holding you back from doing what you want to do, and why are you waiting for a moment that doesn't exist? Are you waiting for a green light or the right time? Because that time does not exist. We make that time. And I ask you all, and I challenge you all to do what you're waiting to do in spite of your insecurities, because I promise you, it is all the more impressive to do it that way anyways. And I put myself out there, and I will continue to put myself out there. And actually, after 6 months after losing my first election, with the support of the person I lost to, I decided to do it again. And now, inevitably, at my next networking luncheon, when I'm asked to share who I am, I will say, hello, my name is Bushra Amiwala. I am Glamour Magazine's College Woman of the Year, 17 Magazine's Voice of the Year, internationally acclaimed as Cosmo Girl's Changemaker of the Year, and as of 1 week ago, I'm the youngest Muslim elected official in the United States. Thank you.